Go. Okay, I'm going to bring this meeting of the Dixon Unified Board of Trustees to order. Seeing no one present for comment on closed session, I will adjourn to closed session. I apologize, we're a few minutes late. We are back from closed session and we have no announcements from closed session. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ryan, you are host now.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Roll call. Lloyd.
Present.
Jewel. You're mute, Jewel.
I say it.
Melissa.
I'm here.
Catlin.
Here.
And I'm here as well. Okay, thank you. Notice to the public for any of you that have not participated in one of these meetings before, since there's not a paper speaking item to turn in, when comment is called for on any specific item or for open comment, please raise your digital hand in Zoom. The board president will recognize you for discussion at the appropriate time. Non-scheduled agenda items will be introduced under section 10 on the agenda. Speakers may be limited to 5 minutes per topic at the discretion of the board president. In the interest of conducting efficient meetings and ensuring that they are structured as possible while being held under the Zoom format, participants are requested to turn off their cameras unless making a public comment. Participants are not required to use their camera during public comment, but are encouraged to do so. Additionally, participants in the meeting will be allowed one opportunity to make public comment on any agenda item. So please think about what you'd like to say and make your comments fully when you get up to speak. The board president will not recognize speakers seeking to make additional public comments on any given agenda item after they have already made public comment. In accordance with Board Bylaw 9324B, the district may tape, film, stream, or broadcast any open board meeting. The recording or broadcast may capture images or sounds of those attending the meeting. Any district recording may be erased or destroyed 30 days after the meeting. Recordings made at the direction of the board during a meeting are public records and upon request shall be made available for inspection by members of the public on district equipment without charge. Okay, recognition of guests and presentations.
None tonight?
Any correspondence?
None.
Okay, consent agenda. Do we have any board questions or comments on the consent agenda? Hearing none, do we have any public questions or comments on the consent agenda? Okay, seeing no raised hands, do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Move to adopt.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll
I
second.
second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call vote. Lloyd?
Aye.
Jewel?
Aye.
Melissa?
Aye.
Catlin?
Aye.
And I'm aye as well. Motion passes. Okay, we don't have any items pulled from the consent agenda. Stakeholder communications. Do we have someone to make a Citizens Oversight Committee statement?
Hello, do I have a good internet connection?
You do.
Tad.
Hi,
Thank
Tad.
you.
Good. I'm Tad Smith. I am chair of the Dixon Citizens Bond Oversight Committee. We held our third Zoom meeting last night, and it looks like we will continue that format for a while. For folks who don't know about the CBOC, this is a citizens group that monitors the expenditure of money by the school district from the 2016 Measure Q initiative that authorized approximately $30 million for major infrastructure improvement at the John Knight Middle School, and smaller upgrades at some of the other schools. So last night, we reviewed and subsequently approved a range of documents, all as valid Measure Q expenditures. Last night's meeting focused on the bid and the contract to upgrade the windows and kitchen facility at the John Knight Middle School, the purchase of furniture for classrooms, and equipment for the library. We also looked at change order number 7 that was brought to the school board for approval at your August 6th meeting. So fortunately, these items are on track for completion in the middle of December. In addition, we received a printout of all expenditures for the 2020 fiscal year, which ran 28 pages of single-space text. For the next few months, CBOC member Georgette Portier will match these costs to various projects and contracts to confirm that all these expenses should be assigned to Measure Q funds. During public comment, we received a potential issue with a roofing barrier, which turned out to look bad, but was not really a problem. We also discussed the long process of obtaining a fire suppression water pipe connection to Cal Water, and that seems to have been resolved in a manner favorable to the district and taxpayers. We have completed and posted our annual report to the community for the 2019 fiscal year. Work on the next report for fiscal year 2020 will start after we have the financial and performance audit that will be issued by the auditing firm James Martin Company sometime in December. So I'm working with the district to ensure that the school board and CBOC can hear that report from James Martin Company at the same time. And I think superintendent indicated that might be at a school board meeting on December 10th. Right now, our annual report can be accessed from the district's website by clicking on the CBOC section, and it shows up immediately under documents. We'll need to clean up a few things on that website, as the CBOC has not focused on posting documents to the website, considering other pressing demands on your IT group in this strange COVID era. So we'll highlight this report in a newspaper article from the CBOC in the next few days. So thank you to the numerous folks from the district for supporting the work of the CBOC and attending the meeting last night. And special thanks to board member Lloyd McCabe, who also attended. Our next meeting will be in November 18th. Thank you very much.
Thank
Thanks
you,
for all your
Tad.
work, Tad. Appreciate.
Okay, employee association reports. I see we have Kathy Michaels with her hand up.
Yes.
Good evening, and I'm going to apologize ahead of time if my dog starts barking. She has a tendency to find every squirrel when we're in the car, so I apologize for that. The DTA would like to update the community and the board on a few things. Last night we had a candidates forum night for our DTA members, and we want to thank the DTA org committee for organizing and running a very successful forum last night. We had over 40 members attend to hear Mr. Foster, Ms. Masada, and Mr. Bowen explain their positions on the various concerns DTA members have. Leadership has been working with the district's HR, and accommodations in general have been negotiated for many individual teachers. The DTA leadership continues to work with the district to request transparency in how the federal COVID funds are being spent. And we do want to thank the district for using some of those funds to support teacher involvement in school leadership. In terms of health and protocols, the DTA leadership is talking with the district and continues to monitor each site and its administration to ensure that members are working in the safety conditions outlined in the MOU. Regarding technology issues, the DTA teachers thank the tech department for their continued work towards providing functioning technology for students and families. We understand it's a huge task, and we understand that some of it is not within the parameters of the tech department. DTA leadership continues to work with the district office to resolve tech problems. Many issues seem to be at higher levels, i.e. local and state internet, which the district is trying to resolve in some way. DTA leadership to work with the district office and the administration at C.A. Jacobs John Knight Middle School to amend the bell schedule so that it's better for our 8th grade students and teachers. Families are being notified so that they know it doesn't change the actual length of the day, but it does make the schedule work better for them. Lastly, DTA leadership fully endorses Prop 15 on the November ballot, which will help fund Dixon schools as well as community resources such as law enforcement and fire. DTA members continue to be committed to ensuring all Dixon students get the best possible education during distance learning and beyond. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks, Kathy.
Kathy. Okay, and I see we have Susie with her hand up for SEIU.
We're not hearing you, Susie.
It would help
There you-
if I unmute
There you go.
myself.
There you go.
Good evening, board members, Superintendent Dolan. My name is Susie Altieri. I'm the SEIU president. We've been largely quiet as we've worked with the district through our MOU process, but I wanted to give you an update on that tonight. We've been working with management for several weeks on this MOU. We have not come to an agreement at this time. Our leadership have been meeting with a variety of our members so they can provide us input on some duties that can be done remotely, as well as additional duties for our members to provide support to staff with no students on campus. Many of our members have been working throughout this closure, and remaining members returned to work in July. SEIU requested rotations in offices to lessen the exposure with the rising COVID cases in Dixon, although we were not provided this option. Many surrounding districts, even our county office, have offered classified employees a variety of options. Some of those including a full remote work option, reduced hours, rotational work hours. We are at as you know, I'm sure 402 COVID cases in Dixon. Being that we're the largest employer in the city, we should be doing our part as a community, particularly so we can get our students returned to classrooms. We think and feel that our MOU provides a comprehensive, viable plan, and we think it's very fair for both our members as well as our district to keep everyone safe. We hope that you were able to receive the MOU and take a look at it, and we will continue to collaborate with the district and hope that we can come to resolve.
Did we lose her?
Yeah.
Frozen at least.
Did you hear me through all the way through?
We lost you right at the
Last
end.
word we heard was result.
I said we hope that we are able to resolve this MOU soon
There you go.
and continue our work, but we would like to come to resolve this MOU as soon as possible so that we can get everyone working safely and keep everyone safe. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks, Susie.
Susie. Okay, do we have any parent association reports tonight?
I don't see any, Luke.
Seeing none, we will move on to public comment. Persons wishing to introduce a topic within the subject matter jurisdiction of the district and not on the agenda may do so at this time. By law, subjects not on the agenda cannot be acted upon by the board, except to briefly respond, clarify, or refer to staff for review and presentation at a future meeting. Comments may be limited to 5 minutes per person to a maximum of 25 minutes per topic, unless extended by the board president. Comments are to be directed exclusively to the governing board, and the board president shall determine who, if anyone, may respond to the comments or questions of the speaker. So if we have any open comment, please raise your hand in Zoom now. Okay, seeing none, we will move on to Item 11, information, discussion, and action. A1, report on the start of the 2020-2021 school year.
Great. Thank you, Luke. We're going to share a couple of different things with you tonight. Before we get into it, just want to continue to extend our thanks out to everyone who is continuing to work so hard and with a great deal of success on the beginning of this school year. This is really hard. Hear that from students, hear that from parents, and certainly hear that from staff. But we continue, to see people addressing the difficulties, demonstrating a lot of flexibility and creativity, and a lot of grit, a lot of determination to continue to work through things. So we really appreciate that from everyone. Tonight we're going to have Monique Stovall, our Chief Business Official, share with you kind of the structure and some of the requirements around the financial reporting. You'll see that there's not a lot to report on at this time, although there certainly will be. And after that, I am going to speak on behalf of Mr. Monticello and Ms. Lauder, who both had family obligations tonight and so aren't with us, to provide updates on a few other things. And then we'll just kick it open for the board. If they have questions of any cabinet members, they will be ready to answer any of those for you tonight. And we will try to keep this item relevant, but perhaps not as long as it has been in recent weeks. So I am going to allow Monique to share her screen with us and invite her to take over. Thank you, Ms. Stovall. It's all yours.
Thank you. I just want to make sure you can hear me okay?
Yep, we can hear
Yes,
you.
and you see the presentation?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, President Foster, member of the board, Superintendent Dolan. This evening, I am presenting to you an update on our COVID one-time funds that I've been talking about over the past few months. I will share information about the most recent expenditure report for specifically the Coronavirus Relief Fund. For those in the audience that aren't familiar with this particular funding source that we have, I wanted to provide some background. So the 2020 California state budget allocated money to districts for COVID-related expenses, commonly referred to as learning loss mitigation funds. These are one-time monies, and at this time, we don't anticipate receiving any more money in the future. Of course, everything with COVID, that might change, but right now we don't anticipate getting any more of this money, so we call them one-time funds. The money must be used for very specific purposes, and they have very specific deadlines. In order to receive these funds and not have to repay these funds, we must report our expenditures on a regular basis, and that's what we will be reviewing this evening. Just a reminder, these are the funding sources, or the sources of funds, the sources for these funds. We received money from a source identified as the Coronavirus Relief Fund. The deadline to expend those funds is December 30th, 2020, and that we received about 1.9 million. State General Fund, deadline very quickly approaching the end of December, and that's about 259,000. We also received what we call GEAR funding, which is about almost $200,000, and ESSER funding, which is about 700,000. Both of those sources of funding, we have a longer time to expend those funds, and that's into the end of September of 2022. Senate Bill 117 was the first source of funding that we received last school year, right when we had the school closures. There was no deadline to spend those funds. We didn't have any reporting criteria, and we've already spent those funds last fiscal year. The reporting requirements are something that I'd like to review with you. When we're reporting our expenditures, we must indicate our total expenditures and the percent spent on the following. These different criteria that I'll share with you let us know specifically what we're allowed to spend these funds on. And I'll just summarize it. We can spend the funds on implementation, expansion, or enhancement of our learning supports, to increase the amount of instructional time or services, for additional academic services for pupils, additional instructional materials or supports, on devices or connectivity, health, counseling, or mental health services, our breakfast and lunch programs, and for trauma and social emotional learning. As mentioned earlier, I'm reporting on the Coronavirus Relief Fund. That's the $1.9 million that we received, and the deadline to spend those monies is the end of December. We learned last Thursday that the first report was due this past Monday, September 14th. We've had to report expenditures from March 1 of last year through the end of last fiscal year, June 30th. And we had no expenditures during that time period. A major reason for that is we did not know what our allocation would be until late July. So we had no expenditures for that particular reporting period. We do anticipate for the next reporting period, we already know we have plenty of expenditures for this particular funding source. So what are our next steps? CDE website states that we are required to report monthly on these different funds. However, they haven't told us when the next deadline is. But our commitment to you is to report to the board after each state reporting so that you are aware of our expenditures. So at this time, I'm open for any questions you may have.
Any board questions?
No.
So when will we actually have a board presentation with like a breakdown of spending?
So you don't have a breakdown this time because there was no spending. At the next report where we have spending and I need to break it down, that's when you'll get that information. And
So
that
we-
is likely to be next month.
Okay. Could I ask, and for people that have come in that don't know, we're asking that all cameras be turned off unless you're going to speak at an appropriate time. So it'll cause a little less distraction. So if you could please turn off your camera, that'd be appreciated. Okay, so, but when would that meeting be? Is that going to be, the second meeting in October? Do we know when that's going to be put on agenda yet?
Unfortunately, I do not know because CDE has not let us know when our next report is due. There's talk that it's due October 15th. However, the original date for this report that we submitted on Monday was actually September 1st. And so they're moving targets and moving deadlines right now.
Okay, great. Any other board questions? Okay, let's go out to public comment. Any public questions or comments?
My name is Luis Landeros. I just received, I tried to get into the meeting earlier.
Okay, I'm seeing none. I can't really hear what's being said. I don't know if
Yeah,
that's
there's someone speaking very quietly. I think the last name was Landeros. I saw or heard.
Okay. If that was an intentional comment, please raise your digital hand by using the reaction tab at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and then we'll get you on so you can make your comment. If it was accidental, then just please mute yourself if it was accidental. Okay, I'm not seeing a raised hand, so I'm going to assume that was not an intentional desire to make a comment. And I see no other public comment being requested. So thank you, Monique. Appreciate that.
So a few other things to report on briefly, and then as I said, board members or public, if they have questions for cabinet members to answer. So the purchasing of large number of Chromebooks for students, about 1,500, and laptops for certificated staff as well as office staff is all underway. There are some issues with supply out there for these types of devices, but the process has been initiated, orders placed, and so we're just awaiting delivery. So we do have some certificated staff and office staff actually with older machines that will be replaced here just as soon as those are delivered to us. Also, another major purchase for a lot of staff members is going to be a second screen, excuse me, second monitor. Our principals and department heads were able to submit kind of wish lists that they had culled together at their sites or in their departments. So new machines, new computers or devices, and second screens were the vast majority of things that were listed on those. There are some other smaller, greater variety of products, some of the headsets, some special lighting, some requests for new document cameras and things of that nature that are being priced and looking to get those items ordered. But there's a bunch of shopping going on, and again, all of that shopping will take place via COVID funding. So there's no general fund impact there. I know Keith Snyder, who is our Aries database manager, he spent a great deal of time again since we last met, working on the syncing issue between Aries and the Google Classroom. So this was a problem with establishing grade books at the secondary level. I understand that a change was made earlier this week that, while probably not a perfect fix, long-term perfect fix, it did address some of the immediate concerns. Aries is continuing to work on this. We're not the only district having this issue. So they're continuing to work on it with hopes that we'll see a permanent and really effective solution coming through as soon as possible. Attendance taking remains really an onerous process for our teaching staff. There's no getting around that. Since we last met, district staff met with our auditors to get a more full understanding of what the reporting requirements are. We're waiting for some formal documentation coming back from them. And again, Adrienne Lauder has been coordinating with her colleagues throughout the county, kind of comparing notes and checking what other districts are doing. I would just say there's a lot of different practices out there. And the bottom line is that we have to be able to account for 4 hours of attendance on a daily basis for all students. That is the requirement under law. And so this is the challenge between the synchronous reporting and the asynchronous reporting. And the sticky part feels for most people to be the asynchronous reporting. That's for students, parents, and staff as well. So we're continuing to have dialogue around this. Again, local action within the county, our auditors fully aware, and there's actually quite a bit of advocacy work and efforts through California Department of Education with people saying, you got to help us fix this. This is just too unwieldy, and it truly is. So we appreciate the patience and extra effort that our staff have to put into this process. We want to simplify it absolutely as soon as we can, and are looking for ways to do that. On behalf of Adrienne Lauder, the way that our hotspot distribution has happened has really kind of been a function of the Pupil Services Office with technology obviously supporting that effort. So at this point, we have distributed all 350 devices that we've had on hand. Another 150 are on their way. We're continuing to find families come in asking for support who actually thought they were going to be okay with what they had, either in terms of home, internet connection, or a hotspot. We continue to see issues of our families out in the country, where the cell signal that that MyFire hotspot is dependent on just aren't very strong. And we also continue to see some families come in when they've got multiple children in the house, also hearing some concerns out of some of the daycare situations around. So if we've now given, if we have 350 of these devices out, we're at more than 10% of our student population with these, and knowing that there's a continued demand. We are in discussions around other ways that we could provide access that honor the social distancing and all the precautionary measures. We've heard of some districts that have actually set up kind of shade tents and picnic tables and those types of things on the outsides of their campuses, and are using some of their staff just to help make sure that distancing is taking place. So we're looking at those types of options as well. And obviously the safety issues with those and supervision issues are the primary concern. But we do see that we have continued concerns here. I should have mentioned in the tech world, Google has had a tough week or week and a half in terms of being able to support all the demand on their system. Zoom is having some of the same kind of problems. Mark did provide email notification to all district staff a couple times within the last week or so that Google was reporting problems. So we continue to use between about 20 and 22% of the bandwidth available in the district. So the issues of connectivity aren't internal. Those are the external factors. And between hotspots, MiFi's chugging along without enough bandwidth there, and issues even with AT&T and Wave, and broader issues across the state and country. Connectivity remains a real challenge, and we understand from the big vendors, the big providers out there, that they're trying to address these issues. We unfortunately have no control, and with some of our staff opting to work remotely beginning next week, so the demand on our internal network will be decreased with that number of staff working remotely. We do have concerns about their ability to work remotely and have robust internet connections to be able to do that work, whether they're working from home or another location. So that's something we'll be monitoring and making sure that we're not losing teachers or having teachers freeze because of inadequate signals for them at home. So we will be paying special attention to that. Intern's also been working very diligently and with some frustration at this point in time, trying to arrange some additional, some childcare support through, they were called the CDCs, Child Development Centers. They're now called Catalyst. She's met several times. We have identified some spaces within the district where we could establish some additional childcare support, and the communication back and forth just isn't sufficient right now to be able to make those expansions. We are looking as best we can at this potential area of service, and want to be able to expand and provide more support. We do know we have about 30 families on a wait list as things now stand, and believe should we be able to advertise that there are more spaces available, more families would actually attempt to get them. The final thing from Adrian, we have, in terms of our mental health supports, 48 students right now who are receiving supports through our clinicians. 33 of those 48 are actually through their IEP, so they're a student with a disability and have mental health as a related service provided. But only 15 are students who do not have an IEP, and they've been referred by staff, parents, or even themselves. We've had a few of our older students make a self-referral that referral is very prominently placed on the very front top portion of our district webpage. So Adrian and I were meeting a couple days ago, and we're both actually rather surprised at that low number of only 15 at this point in time. She did mention that typically at this time of year, referrals are a little low in numbers, but I was anticipating with this extremely unusual condition and all different kinds of new stresses on families, we would see more referrals. So please, for anybody listening or watching, use that button and make those referrals. It takes less than 5 minutes to complete one. I just did one last week for a student who I seen in the grocery store. But please, parent, student, staff member, please use that resource if it's needed there. And even if you're not sure if it's needed, please make use of that. So that's what we wanted to report tonight. Again, take any questions on those issues or any questions from the board for any of the cabinet heads, district administrators. We're happy to address anything you're wondering about.
Great, thank you, Brian. Board questions? Okay, I've got just a few. In terms of the country families, how many do we know of that actually have the MiFis, but they just don't reach out there? Do we have any idea if it's not having enough of the MiFis versus the MiFis just not reaching those areas?
Yeah, we're hearing more. It's about the strength of signal, Luke. I can ask Adrian to follow up on that for us. I don't know exactly. Typically, those families come back in and say, if it's a multi-student household, then we are saying absolutely take more than one device, and that helps a little bit, is what I understand. But I think the bigger issue is just the strength of cell signal out in those more remote areas.
Okay. So where are we on getting some parent training and evening help set up?
I'm going to let Mr. Giramonti address that one. I was in part of a principals meeting today where that was being discussed, and I had to kind of jump out to another meeting as that was happening. So some progress along those lines, but I'll let him take that over. Mr. Giramonti.
I'm here, I promise. Good evening, everybody. So we are ready to push out some pre-made things by some of our there's some resources out there that folks can use that go beyond, or that are just established by, say, Google, et cetera, that are really kind of those first level of help that folks can get. Jake Ritchell, our tech TOSA, is going to set up a meeting with our site tech people as well as parent liaisons, so that they can make sure that everyone's on the same page with regard to how they are supporting families. And then we started exploring with our principals today some potential ideas for bringing people in, because it's one thing to do some Zoom trainings for folks, but honestly, the people who most need us right now are even having trouble accessing a Zoom link. And a lot of those folks also are in need of some translation services as well. So one idea that we were discussing with elementary principals was to create some opportunities during the day or after school or after the school day where families can come in and safely get some one-on-one help with some of our staff to support that. But this has been an area where we're not as far along as we'd like to be at this point, to be frank. We do know that at individual sites, people are reaching out and doing what they can do to reach people, but to say that we've gotten systematic about this at this point wouldn't be where we are. So beginning that work in earnest next week with Jake and that team, and also pushing out those resources that are already made online for a lot of these platforms.
Okay, and you anticipated my follow-up to that, which was about what we're going to do for our Spanish-speaking family. So whatever way we figure out to do that, we'll just utilize our translators to help do essentially the same function.
Yeah, I think the key here is we have great bilingual parent liaisons who, some of whom, it really kind of depends, but are certainly capable of learning these platforms, if not already have learned them, and it's really about making sure that they have the support of the site tech as well as ed services in the IT department to be able to offer that first line of support. I think that's going to be our best bet on this.
Okay, super, thank you. Any other board questions before we go to public comment? Okay, seeing none, then we'll go out to public comment. I see Kathleen Burrows has her hand up, so she'll be first.
Thank you. Good evening. I have 3 questions. I'm hoping that I know that there are some people not able to attend tonight, but I'm hoping nonetheless that I can get some kind of response once public comment closes. My first question is regarding the purchase of the Chromebooks. I heard that there were roughly 1,500 Chromebooks ordered. However, my question is, are these laptops refitted or refurbished as Chromebooks? The reason I ask is because several of my students, as well as several, if not many students across the district who received refurbished Chromebooks at the start of the year had some serious technical difficulties wherein they couldn't listen to audio on asynchronous videos that were posted by teachers on the first day of school. They're still continuing to have issues with audio and video as well. And so I just want to make sure that our students are receiving the best technology possible and the most conducive for distance learning. My next question is regarding Aries communication. To the best of my memory, I believe, Mr. Dolan, you had mentioned that there would be an exploration or discussion around reinstituting the contract with Aries communication. I just refreshed my email. I can't find any emails from district staff, specific or speaking to that concern. So I'm hoping that we could receive an update tonight, if at all possible. And my last question was regarding students without Wi-Fi. I have a small contingent of my students, and I know that I speak on behalf of many of my colleagues at CI Jacobs who have been, MIA, for lack of a better term, since the very beginning of the school. And I vaguely remember last spring with our emergency remote learning that I think Adrian Lauder had been able to provide teachers and school sites with a comprehensive list of students who didn't have any access to Wi-Fi. So I'm just, I'd be curious if Ms. Lauder could provide something comparable, if not, like a very detailed list of our students who are having difficulty with utilizing the MiFi spots out in remote areas, or students who have absolutely no access to Wi-Fi. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kathleen. Okay, do we have any other public comments or questions? Okay, I see Abby Landeros. Go ahead.
Part of Abby Landeros. She's in 2nd grade. It's the first time that that I'm getting with you guys and see the meeting, which is great to see it. But I have 2 questions. There is a chance or possibility that the school they might be open for the kids that they really need help.
Were you able to get that question, Brian?
I was, yes, yeah.
Okay.
And I think Mr. Landeros is a new attendee to our meetings, so I'll just explain that we take all questions and close comment, and then we answer the questions that have been asked. So I won't be answering that immediately, but we will just as soon as we take any other comments or questions. Did you have a second question, or was that the only one?
That's the only one that I'm concerned, because like I said, there's a lot of kids that they're very behind and they don't have the ability to manage their computer. So I think personally that'd be great if they can manage some kind of program to put those kids in class face to face with the protocols of social distance. And I'm really concerned about that. That's the only one. Thank you.
Great, I'll speak to that in just a few moments.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Landeros. Okay, we have Tiffany has her hand up.
Hi.
Hi, go ahead.
Good evening. I wanted to talk about, I guess you guys are doing things for Aries, And that's kind of where my concern was this week is the consistency of what I'm seeing with my daughter's attendance in junior high and being like, making sure, because we haven't missed anything yet. We haven't missed anything, but one day, say she was marked absent for one class because something didn't go through the internet. So I find that marking somebody absent because of an assignment is not effective, because we check every day after school, everything's turned in. The next day we go back, there was some sort of problem, and we have to resubmit. But that was for my question about Aries. And next is for elementary school and the testing for anyone special education and or needs help with reading. That testing started this week, and it was called Renaissance testing for second graders. I find a little bit discouraging to anyone that they had to go through and fail this on purpose because it was required by the district, instead of a teacher being saying this student's not good for this style of testing and it should go to early literacy testing instead. So not does the student have to sit and do the failed test, then retest again. I think it's a little bit of a waste of a time for the teacher and for the students. And my question is why can't we do that for struggling readers to begin with?
Okay.
Okay,
Thanks,
anything
Tiffany.
else, Tiffany?
Nope, that was it. All
Great,
done.
thank you very much.
Mhm.
Okay, do we have any other public questions or comments? Okay, seeing nothing more, I'm going to close public comment. Brian, which
Yes.
you want to just go through them in order?
I will go through them in order. So first question was regarding the purchase of the 1,500 Chromebooks. Happy to say that those are brand new machines. So they will not be the refurbished or converted books that we do have some of our students with right now. We would anticipate a process of contacting those families, those students who have older devices, some of those modified netbooks, and replacing those, swapping those out for one of the new machines for one of those older machines. There was one of the issues around audio and video was fixed in the early goings. There were in the first few days of school, that was a problem. And there was some sort of programming change made that helped with that, although we know that the best device a student could have right now would be a brand new one. So good news on that, and again, COVID funded. The Aries communication, we are going to go ahead, or have gone ahead. I did not remember to ask Mark about that. To contract again, activate that that particular communication device. We do remain, quite honestly, we remain concerned about how many staff are going to use it, or because historically it has been minimally used across the district. However, we did hear from staff concerned about wanting to have that as a tool. And right now, we believe we have to do everything that we possibly can to provide communication to parents. One of the things we're hearing right now is how important it is for parents to be able to speak to teachers about how their students are doing as well, or interface electronically if that's in Google Classroom or whatever. So this will be provided, but we're also going to be continuing to encourage that person-to-person contact for which there is no substitute, obviously. So I'm afraid I don't know the timing on that, but that will be in place. I'll check with Mark next week, and he can provide an update out to staff.
Hey, Brian,
yes.
Would it be possible, is there some way maybe there would be more use of that if teachers had some kind of short training on all the functionality of that?
Yeah, we will. It's really pretty easy to use, as I've seen it used once, kind of a demonstration. So it is really pretty simple, and you can do a whole class in just a few clicks, or customize a message to an individual student or family. And so, yeah, there'll be some basic refresher or new training for those who haven't used it before. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
And third question from Kathleen was regarding students with Wi-Fi issues or without Wi-Fi. And I think what I'd say here, so Adrian, we have responded to people who've made the request. And again, we have a little bit of a waiting list right now again. But I'd actually say the people who are best aware of students with Wi-Fi issues are our teachers. And I think we need to create some sort of loop here for teachers to notify, whether it's at the site level to their administrator or into Adrian's office, that they have in fact been able to identify a student who is having problems with Wi-Fi connections. That direct contact between teacher and student or teacher and family is where that information is going to come most clearly and quickly, I do believe. So we can look for something to come out within just the next few days. Adrian is off again tomorrow for her family situation, where we ask staff to report those concerns into the office, whether again at the site or here at the district office. And we'll be able to address the families based on what teachers are telling us. We know this remains a very large issue, as we're getting our equity work more formally started, and Maria will have a report on that at our next meeting. The gaps with regards to technology and connectivity are just staggering, really disheartening, quite honestly. So Kathleen and other staff listening, look for that opportunity to provide us with identification of some of those families. Next question was from Mr. Landeros, and that was, what can we do for students who are struggling, and is there any way to bring students into the school setting right now? I am going to take part of this answer, and then I'm going to ask Mr. Germani to fill in any holes that I leave. So right now, the only students who are reporting to campus are students in need of assessment or testing for special education purposes. So they either already have an IEP and are due for annual or tri testing, or they have been identified as needing testing. And those students are coming in on an individual basis and are meeting with the teacher or school psychologist who's conducting the testing, with additional plexiglass shielding and the masks and screens and everything else. We desperately need to be able to serve more students. Your concern, sir, is absolutely well-founded. There is a provision to apply for waivers that's under law right now that would allow you to bring small groups of students in for services, the kind of services you're talking about. And what we're hearing right now is that as Solano County is making progress towards moving from purple, the worst condition with regards to the virus, to red, the next level up, and then it goes to orange and yellow, that when a county moves to red, that schools then can reopen, fully reopen. Now, I say that, and I want to tell people, please do not hear that and say we're fully reopening when Solano County turns to red. We cannot reopen without the full dialogue kind of process that we had through the summer regarding were we going to do distance learning and were we going to work in person or remotely and all those other things. I believe we'll be returning to very lengthy meetings with a lot of input, and we'll be returning to the negotiations table as well to work out the details of what in-person teaching might look like. We're being advised as of last week, and I'll be in the meeting again tomorrow with public health, that the waiver application process, which is pretty large and pretty slow, really is not going to have as much significance when the county turns to red, because then you could bring in those small groups of students if you wished without needing to go through the waiver process. So we'll know some more tomorrow, and we will know more obviously as each week goes on. But the idea that we have, and it is many, many students who do need the support of their teachers and other support staff on campus on a regular basis, is 100% accurate. It's a need that we clearly identify. We have the obligation to meet the safety requirements, follow the law, and we're going to do everything we can within those parameters to bring people back as soon as we can. Again, meeting all those things and having agreement with our labor groups. We have been talking about after-hours support for students, and that's what I wanted to have Mr. Giramani speak to, the planning work that's going on along those lines of what can we do to support students without them coming into campus, kind of in the hours after school is out.
Yes, so we've been talking about providing some support to our families for after-hour support. We think this is something we've definitely heard from our working families, where folks are working during the day and not able to really get in contact with teachers during the regular work hours for reasons that are obvious. In the survey that we'll be putting out to families here in the next few days, we're actually asking that question to truly get a sense of what that need is. We anticipate it will be high. So we're talking with our elementary leaders as well as our secondary leaders to figure out the best way to do that work. Not surprisingly, our teachers right now are feeling, I don't want to say overwhelmed, because I don't want to speak for them, but the work that they're doing right now is hard. So to expect them to then, raise their hands, obviously not, for pay, but to want to do more time after hours with families is probably an unreasonable ask. We did have our elementary teachers, our elementary principals ask that question, and we had a pretty small interest from those folks. Our secondary principals have actually landed on the idea of trying to use some of our students as tutors to do some of this work. There are some things that we need to work out as far as logistics with that. We've done that in the past at Dixon High School, especially with our learning center approach, where we had a classified employee sort of supervising the learning center while our students were able to tutor their peers. From a supervision standpoint, that was something that was pretty doable when you're in a library physically, an adult monitoring. There's a whole host of challenges there when we go to an online environment. So we're still working out some of the details there. But again, same sort of response from those folks as far as, I just don't anticipate that we'd have too much interest from our staff to want to do that. If that changes, we're happy to compensate folks who want to do that work. So still working on it. What we've landed on elementary at this point, if we continue to not have too much DUSD teacher interest, is possibly using some of our kind of our go-to subs and training them in some of this work to be able to do that. So no firm answer on that yet, but we're moving towards some options for families.
Okay, thanks, Nick. For Ms. Thiessen, concerns about attendance and ARIES. And this is one of the biggest issues that we've got going on right now with attendance, is the work around the asynchronous time, especially, and is an assignment completed and recorded, and how does that impact attendance? And I don't know if you were in the meeting when I was talking about that just a little bit earlier. This is an issue across California right now, and we're spending time talking with local districts as well, of trying to find a way to streamline this for teachers and not create these issues for students and families where it looks like they haven't done something or were absent from the work when in fact they did do the work and were present. So to some degree, this is an issue of timing. Our staff does have up to 7 days to enter that attendance. but that's still a kind of a cumbersome and confusing process. So we are working again to try to get clarity on this and simplify this for everybody. It is not working for staff or students, parents as well at this time. So look for improvement there. It's outside of Dixon. We're working hard on it internally to see what we could do, but also relying on ARIES and other support. And on elementary testing, Mr. Germani, I'm going to have you take, this was topic of conversation at the elementary principal meeting this morning that I was part of. Mr. Germani knows more about it than I do by a bunch, so I'm going to let him take this.
And part of a text conversation I was just having with an elementary principal as well. So this issue of second grade and appropriate testing for them is not even something that's unique to right now. We do have an early literacy part of our STAR program that we use, our Renaissance program. We start with the Ren Learn exam for second graders, and then we recognize that we have a non-reader, then we'll go with the early lit exam for those kids, but we don't start with that. And I'll say this, maybe we should have this year with the way last year ended for our first grade students who are now second graders. But we also have a number, and I'll talk about these later in the LCAP presentation, but we do have a number of exams that are designed to really hone in on where our struggling readers are struggling. So if a child is identified as somebody who needs RTI, for example, they're going to get some additional testing to really sort of suss out where their struggles are. So I don't have a great answer on this, to be honest with you. We just have, second grade is sort of an interesting spot for our kids who are struggling to read and what's the most appropriate assessment to give them. And then just to talk broader about this, we've been having conversations as a team over the last year really about the appropriateness of Ren Learn as our testing provider and the need to explore some other options, which had been in the cards to pilot some programs this fall. Obviously, that was put on hold with the distance learning. We didn't want to add in that layer of complexity to this year when it's already super complex. But long term, we will be looking at some other testing programs that might yield some better results for us and the ability to serve our kids a little bit better.
Yeah, and I would just add in there, part of what I heard in the conversation today was just absolutely how frustrating the assessment process is, both for the teachers administering the assessments and for students and parents, actually, that it's very unwieldy, that the reliability of the data that teachers are finding from the assessments is really questionable, that that in many instances, you know, a student has their parent next to them, helping support them as the assessment is going on. And as any parent would want to do, they're nudging or encouraging or coaching a little bit their student with the assessment. Every best intention in the world doing that, but it also kind of invalidates, again, the outcome of that assessment. So what I heard from the principals today was essentially, if there's some way that we can conduct assessments in person, individually, with our students in very small groups, whatever, please help us get that in place. So that was, again, back to Mr. Landeros's question too. We don't have a good idea right now because we haven't had our students on campus with us since the middle of March, where students are, and that's a huge issue. And Nick, you look like you've got something else you want to add, or nope? Okay. And that's it. Luke, on questions and answers from us.
Okay. Well, let's move on to item 11A2 then. John Knight Middle School Renovation Project Contract Increase Proposal for Wallace Cool Associates for testing and inspection services.
Great. I'm going to welcome in Lee Coop from School Site Solutions Incorporated. School Site Solutions is a consultant that we have been working with now for, gosh, about 1.5 years, even a little bit longer than that, overseeing our Measure Q efforts. And tonight, Lee will present one extension of a contract and one new contract with an engineering firm that completes testing for us on the project. So Lee, thank you. Take it away.
Thank you, Superintendent. Thank you to the board, members of the public, and staff. My name is Lee Coop from School Site Solutions, and this item is for a contract extension for Wallace Cool and Associates, which is our testing and inspection services contractor. They perform a number of different tests as needed when it comes up on the project, including soils testing, concrete testing, other types of testing. These are, of course, required by law that we have to do it by Division of State Architect. So this one is an increase to their current contract. Their current contract is $40,150, and we are proposing a $15,000 not to exceed. This is an hourly thing, so it's not to exceed extension on it, and that is due to the extra time and increased scope in the project. And this should take us to the end of the regular renovation project on this one.
Okay, thank you, Lee. Do we have any board questions or comments on this item? Okay, hearing none. Do we have any public questions or comments on this item?
Seeing none.
Okay, seeing none, I will entertain a motion to approve the John Knight Middle School renovation project contract increase proposal for Wallace Cool Associates for testing and inspection services.
I'll move.
I'll second.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion.
Cicely will figure out who did what there.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
Cicely, flip a coin.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call vote. Lloyd?
Aye.
Yule?
Aye.
Melissa?
Aye.
Catlin?
Aye.
And I'm aye as well. Motion passes. Thank you. Okay, item 3, John Knight Middle School Window Kitchen JKMS W-K project testing and inspection services, Wallace Cool Associates.
Thank you. This is again Wallace Cool and Associates. We use them for our testing inspection. This is for the separate bid that was for the window and kitchen project, a window replacement and kitchen renovation project. And this is for, again, a not to exceed hourly for $12,125. Some people would want to make sure that we're not double counting their time, and our team does that. Jim Bambachi and my colleague make sure that Wallace Cool would not be double testing or double billing, since they'll be on the same site. But the testing is for different things and for different areas of the campus. And they may be having to come out at different times. So I'm pretty confident that there wouldn't be a problem with that. And again, this is a new contract and should take us through the window and kitchen project, barring any issues we don't know about.
Okay, any board questions? And we've been happy with their work so far on the project?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, seeing no board questions, any public questions on this? I see one from Tad Smith.
Hi, my question is on the window replacement. What type of testing would they be doing? What would they be looking for? I think the lead paint issue's long gone. So what is there left to do? Thank you.
I'm not sure on the windows per se. There might be some work on the kitchen, and it probably on the kitchen with the concrete on the flooring is where most of that will be.
And this is, as you said, I think this is a DSA requirement to have an inspector on this aspect of the project?
Yes, on construction projects, at the very beginning of a project, there'll be a testing and inspection schedule. So the contractor and the team go through what kind of testing will be needed, and then you hire the testing labs to do this work, and they go through and do the testing on site, do the reports, make sure that everything's meeting the standards that they need to meet.
Okay. Any other public questions on this item? Okay, seeing none, I will entertain a motion to approve item 11A3, John Knight Middle School Window Kitchen JKMSW-K Project Testing and Inspection Services of Wallace Cool Associates.
So moved.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Roll call vote. Lloyd?
Aye.
Jewel?
Aye.
Melissa?
Aye.
Catlin?
Aye.
And I'm aye as well. Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Lee.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lee. Appreciate your help as always.
Thank you very much.
Okay, and on to item 11A4, enrollment and staffing update.
Yes, thanks, Luke. So this is a time of the year where typically we will provide the board with some information regarding our enrollment and staffing levels. We unfortunately are dealing with another decline in enrollment this year that we've now confident we've kind of chase the ghosts out of the system, for lack of a better term. There's a period of time after we start where students who have withdrawn, families who've moved, haven't necessarily notified us, and we don't have requests for records from the new school site that they are attending. So we're feeling pretty confident that these numbers are now the solid numbers that we'll be working with from this point on. So I am going to share my screen here and make sure that everybody can see the data that I'm going to be talking about. So this document is just an update of one that I shared last year as well. And what it captures is where we were at the point we started school last year, so August 2019, and then where we were in May, so at the end of last school year. And so what this column shows is the difference between where we started and where we ended last year. And you can see that that difference last year was just 11 students. So while we had a decrease, a significant decrease at the start of the year, we did hold our attendance pretty well with just a drop of 11 students over the course of the school year, right? We had in the previous couple of years, we'd had 70 and 60, in the 70s and in the 60s declines between the start of the year and the end of the year. So we felt a little bit better that we held on to our students last year. But what you see here now is those numbers that we had when we finished school in May, in June, but I just used the last full week in May as our number, and where we are here now in September. And so over here, I used August because we started later, I used September, right? And so you can see that we have a variety of grade levels with significant drops, as we've seen recently, and that we ended in May at 3,058 students. And as of today, and these numbers are fresh today, that we're at 2,965 students. So that's a decline of 93 students from May to currently. I put this page, these notes on the page just as a way to give a little bit of summary of what's on the table up above, and perhaps in a more concise, a concise manner to report it. So the first line says from May 2019 to August 2019. So that is the end of the 18-19 school year to the start of the 19-20 school year. We declined by 108 students. And then, as I said above, and sorry, I have a discrepancy of 2 students here, my apology. From the start of that school year, that 19-20 school year to the end of it, that was just that difference of about 10 or so kids, okay? Now, from August of last year to September of this year, here's this capture of 104 students that we saw a decline of. And again, from May to September, so where we ended school in May of this year to now, there's a decline of 93 students. So again, an alarming trend of declining enrollment. We are held harmless again this year. So we're operating off of our ADA from last year. But ultimately, without a return to growth in enrollment, we have a serious issue with regards to revenue attached to students and making sure that we are appropriately staffed and meeting our contractual ratios, but staffed efficiently, so we're not spending more money on providing teachers in excess of the staffing ratios. So the good news with regards to staffing ratios, and unfortunately, as the board is well aware, you took the votes to make this happen. We did conduct a certificated layoff last spring, in which we did reduce staffing to meet our enrollment. And what you can see as we look through this document is that we are currently staffed really pretty well to enrollment. We have this organized by school site. So Anderson, Tremont, and Gretchen Higgins. And what I would draw your attention to is really this column where, and I'm sorry, it says 2019-2020 here. It should actually say 2020-21. So this is the current information here. I just overlooked changing those headings as I recycled last year's document. So this column are the current averages. So in TK through third grade, where we are obligated both by state law and our contract to staff at 24:1, we currently see a ratio of 23.19 at Anderson. I'm going to continue. We see a ratio of 23.1 at Tremont, and we see a ratio of 24.36. So this is for the class size reduction grade levels of TK through third grade. And I'll just draw your attention down here then. So when I add up all the students in this grade range and divide it by the number of classrooms we have, and you have a half because we have one combination class involving third graders, that our district average for class size in TK through third is 23.54. So if our ratio, as I say, is 24:1, and we're at 23.54, we're closely staffed to ratio. You have to be careful in exceeding 24:1 at any school site, because if you do that, you lose funding for all of the class size reduction money, the grade span adjustment money for your district. So being a little bit under that 24 is usually something that we're comfortable doing. This number, if it were in the low part of 23 or 22 or even 21, then I would be telling you that we are overstaffed in TK through third grades. And what I tell you with 23.54 is that we're closely staffed to ratio. And so we do not have any significant concerns. You know, if I were 24.0 on the nose, that would be the ideal. But at 23.54, we are appropriately staffed to contract ratio and state law, and are not in a position where we're thinking we have too many teachers in those grade levels. Okay. Now I'll jump to the fourth and fifth grade, and by contract, our fourth and fifth grade ratio is 29:1. And at this time of year, we're actually allowed to go up into the 31 range. And one thing you'll notice is that we do not have a lot of students in our fourth and fifth grades right now. And that trend continues down below. But you will see that at Anderson, the fourth and fifth grade combined average is 29.11. At Tremont, it is 32.5. And at Gretchen Higgins, it is 31.25. So when you do all the math and you combine that district-wide average, we're at 30.88 in 4th and 5th grade staffing ratio across the district. So again, what that tells us is that we are staffed well to contract, and that we are not overstaffed and spending more money on teachers in that 4th and 5th grade level than would be appropriate, right? So you want, ideally we would have 20 kids like the old days in the primary grades, and maybe 25 in those intermediate grades. But those days are long gone. We are afraid, and probably never to come back, unfortunately. But when you look at these numbers here, you can feel confident that we have staffed well. We've staffed appropriately for the number of students that we have in the elementary settings, okay? Now, doing this in the secondary level is really difficult to do because you have so many different types of courses and departments. And so what I did here, and I didn't do this one actually last year, so I ran the report just this afternoon. It's called a class load analysis, and you're able to run it by department area. And this does not include every course offered at both CAJ or John Knight or Dixon High School. There's a lot of classes. It's a singleton. So what I did is I grouped by major departments on the campuses, and we'll share with you that across the whole range of classes in language arts, and this includes ELD at both C.A. Jacobs and Dixon High School, and ELD tends to run smaller than the regular language arts or English classes. So we're at 29.0 average across all the sections. In language arts, we're at 29.3 in all the sections. In social science, history, we're at 27.4 in math. That one is a little bit lower because it includes the tier 3 math classes, the math support classes that are on campus. We're at 30.7 in science. You'll see at both sites, PE is physical education is significantly higher. We're at 39.3, and in art and music, and there's a total of 8 classes in art and music, we're at 29.3. And what I would tell you is in the art program, the classes are quite large, and in music, we have an average class size of 22 students per the 3 classes there. So we're concerned about the band enrollment in the middle school currently, and without being able to have traditional band program in 5th grade right now because of distance learning, it worries us about band enrollment rolling forward. It's something we're going to have to make some real effort around. So at Dixon High School, you'll see the numbers are a little bit higher on average than at C.A. Jacobs in English, which again includes ELD, 31.7 across all grade levels at the site. In history, social science, 31.1. In math, 29.3. This includes the support classes at Dixon High School. In science, 29.4. In language, 30.7. And in physical education, again, right there at 39.1. And then at Main Prairie, I don't run this by department or course. Main Prairie has a school-wide staffing ratio of 20 to 1, so 20 students to 1 to each certificated teacher. Right now we have 81 students at Main Prairie, so that ratio is 16.1. And what happens over the course of the year is that as students withdraw from Dixon High School and transfer to Main Prairie, you'll see the Dixon High School numbers decrease and the Main Prairie numbers increase. So that's part of what we account for in staffing, is that attrition or the movement of students out of Dixon High into Main Prairie. And so you see these numbers go down over the course of the school year. So just like in the elementary level, I would say that we are staffed efficiently in the secondary setting. So as we talk about this decline here, the actions we took in terms of reducing positions, eliminating positions back in March and finalizing in May were the appropriate downsizing for our enrollment situation at this point in time. I would just say I guess I'd say I'm more optimistic about enrollment here today than I was even on Monday. Luke and Catlin joined me in a meeting with two members of the city council and the city manager, and talked about the very large amount of housing development that is beginning and is going to continue for some amount of time. We need to have those students attend school in Dixon. And that's a component of making sure that our schools are serving students well, that they are attractive to the eye, which is a current concern that we have, that they have programs that draws families and wants them to stay with us, and that we're finding a variety of ways to meet students' needs. Homes being built does not guarantee that enrollment will increase. We have to make sure that we are attracting students through the work that we're doing with them, and that families have the confidence to have their students enroll with us. We will see this growth really beginning to take off. It's a very preliminary report that I have, but if you recall last year, we did a study on where students who left the district went. And right now, I don't want to get into these numbers too much, because right now we have 41 students who are still unaccounted for as to where they went. One thing I will tell you is, just as I think a sign of the times, 21 students who left us went to the California Virtual Academy. So we knew that we would see growth in some of the online charters because of distance learning, and those programs are designed for that specific model. And so that's one example of a lot of movement towards that program. And across the rest of the numbers, very typical to what we saw with last year, of a lot of neighboring districts, some out of state, some out of country, and then people leaving for other parts of California as well. I'd like to do another update for you, probably in 2 meetings from now, and would be able to update this information about where students went and give you any progress reports on if our numbers have changed at that point in time. I did 2 reports on this last year, and would like to do that again this year if it pleases the board. So I threw a lot of information at you. I have to believe there are questions, so I'm happy to entertain any of those at this time.
Thank you, Brian. Board questions?
Luke, I have some questions, if I may.
Go ahead, Melissa.
Brian,
Yep.
the first question is, how many less students did we plan for budgeting purposes? Because I know we had some built-in declining enrollment into our budget.
We did.
And I don't think we were planning in our budget to lose 100 kids.
No, a great question, and I anticipated it. I asked Monique to provide me with that information earlier today, which she did promptly and accurately. So Melissa, we in our 45-day revised budget, what we projected as enrollment at that point in time was 3,029. So we're about 65 below that number. So that is a concern, that we do have that 65 fewer projected. Initially, we had been projecting, last year was flat, and this year we were going to have a growth of 30. So we captured a portion of this with our projections, but not at the level that we're now experiencing. So there is issue there that we're going to have to plan for as we do our budget stabilization plan here in the next couple months.
Well, and I do know some people who are in such programs like the Virtual Academy, as soon as if it's possible to go back, they'll come back.
Right.
Because I do
right.
know some
Yep.
students who've left. My other question is I think it's always great for us to see the averages, but
Yeah.
what always concerns me is we never see where the problem areas are.
Sure.
So are there any classes throughout the district, whether it's elementary or secondary, where there's just a lot of students in one class?
Yeah, that's a great question, and thank you. I meant to make a mention of that. So I work with two different forms of the same report here, and I'll hold these ones up. So this is called a class load analysis, and this is what we use at the secondary level. And what this shows me is every course for both the middle school, high school, and alt ed by period and by how many students are enrolled in each section of that. So we have somewhere around 240 or so individual periods, for example, at Dixon High School, right? So I'm able to look at this and see where those larger numbers are. I did a look back about, it's probably about 3 weeks ago or so, where I checked those numbers out, and there certainly are some spaces that are running large in both Dixon High and C.A. Jacobs. I'm thinking, the large ones, and I'm sorry I'm not better prepared for that specific question. There's a number of them that are in like that 35 or 36 range, and probably a handful, and this does not include PE, and probably a handful that are a little bit bigger than that 35 or 36. Some of those are when a class is a singleton. There's only one period of offered, right? So one I can cite off the top of my head, it caught my eye earlier, is we only have one period of AP psychology as an example. And there's 38 students in that particular class, which is very large. And there were not enough students to merit having 2 periods of that. And so as schedule changes happened and requests were made and all those normal things, that class, as an example, got up to 38. Our 5th grade classes across the district are large. They're all 32s or 33s, if I remember correctly. And then we have some 25s and 26s. I don't think we have a 27 in the lower grade level, but there certainly are some grade levels at a couple of the sites where actually I can take a look at them, where you've got some bigger numbers. In 1st grade at Tremont, for example, you've got 51 kids in 2 classes. So one of those is 26 and one of those is 25, right? Anderson, we don't have those problems. Maybe there might be a little one. No, we have a combo there, so we're okay. At Gretchen Higgins, you see 25, so there's 75 kinders in 3 classes, so 25 apiece. There's 3 of 26 in 1st grade at Gretchen, and then the 3rd grade is 24 and a half. So you've got 124 and 125. So we certainly do have individual classrooms across the district that exceed those ideal numbers. But contractually, we're obligated to, the language provides that we use the school-wide averages. So yeah, there are spots that are larger, but they're not widespread, I guess is how I would try to summarize that.
When you bring this back, can you maybe give us some more details about that, especially
Sure.
Even more so at the secondary?
You bet.
I think it's probably easier to tell me that right now at the primary grades, but
it's a
at
lot,
this,
yeah.
if we could get that for the secondary to make sure that
You
we're
bet.
staffed appropriately, that would be great.
Yeah, a lot less data, yeah. And what I can actually do, I think it would be wise to do, excuse me, is highlight the classes that are running large and also highlight the classes that are running smaller, right? Because when you see the averages, they balance out okay. And that's one of the quirks that'll happen in a master schedule every year, is that some sections will run larger and some will run smaller. And there's sometimes there can be a bug in the schedule itself that attributes that. Sometimes it's just the quirks of requests, and you don't really have any means to kind of manage that per se. So yeah, in the month I'll be able to I'll bring you some specific data on what sections look like. Okay.
Thank you.
You bet.
Great, thank you. Any other board questions?
I had a question about how we're getting the numbers just in terms of student numbers. So is this enrollment or attendance? So are these people who have, intended to enroll? Because I know we're having problems with attendance as well. Like
Yeah.
counting attendance, I know that I've heard parents say that kids are being marked absent when they're not there. And I know we're also not really calculating for ADA at the moment. So how are we getting this snapshot of numbers?
Yeah, so this is, at this point in time, this is attendance only. So here we'll begin running the attendance reports here shortly, and those will show us what that percentage of attendance is, the ADA, which is the critical component and how we end up getting funded in the calculations from the state, primarily funded anyway. So it's going to be interesting, and as the bugs get worked out with attendance, so typically we run a district-wide average of about 95% is the typical 95, 96%. I'm curious if, again, when the dust settles and distance learning, if we might actually see a little bit of a higher percentage rate because you could sign into school when you're at home not feeling well, whereas in normal business, you might not go to school, right? How that plays out is going to be interesting. I'm not sure how it'll go, but it's something we'll monitor. So we're not quite at that percentage of enrollment figure yet, but it's something we're going to be monitoring closely for sure. Nick, you have something to add?
Yeah, Brian, I think you meant to say that these are just enrollment, not just attendance, right?
These are enrollment, yes.
Okay.
Sorry. Yeah.
Thanks, Nick. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
These are enrollment numbers only. Yes.
Okay.
Okay, anything else from the board? Just a couple questions, Brian. So you talked about the normal change of numbers as some students transfer from Dixon High School to Main Prairie.
Mm-hmm.
Have you considered how you think that might differ in a distance learning model?
We've had just a little bit of conversation about that, Luke. What drives those that movement really is the number of credits students have as they progress through those high school semesters, right? And whether or not, what will be interesting is how students, if we see more students not earn credits because of this distance learning model, and therefore if that increases the demand for spots at Main Prairie or not, or if somehow this model allows students to be more successful in earning their credits, right? At this point in time, it's pretty typical for us to be at that 80, 81 number for enrollment at Main Prairie. I think if we look back to last year, we were in a very similar space. So we do want to have some room to fill over there, but predicting what's going to happen this year, I'm not going to try to do that at this point.
My other question is, obviously this is a very unusual year, and
Yes.
as we've discussed, there are some families that have just decided to go to distance charter or whatnot. But have we thought about trying to reach out to other families and find out why they left? Was it a problem in our schools? Was it work moved us? Where do we have issues that we might need to improve to help improve this issue?
Yeah, so we have some of that information anecdotally from the school offices where a parent called in or wrote an email. That tends to be more in the elementary setting than it does in the secondary. But that is part of what we want to be able to do with regards to the local folks, right? People who've gone into online charters or private schools in the area. I'm not going to spend any time trying to track down people who've moved out of state or to Southern California. But for folks who are in the region, I think it is important that we try to identify some of what's going on for them. You know, we've had, yeah, you know, right now, this is my data is showing we gained more students from Vacaville Unified during this period of time than we lost to Vacaville Unified. That's not the normal development that I'm used to seeing. So we will check those kinds of things out because again, part of the enrollment issue we know is about attracting and retaining families based on the quality of programs and the kind of supports we're providing students and what outcomes families are seeing for their kids. So talking to people is an important way to learn some of that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I guess let's go out to public comment. I see Kathy Michaels has her hand up.
Hello. I just want to go on record a little bit with this for in terms of the teacher's perspective and the DTA's perspective. I think we need to make parents aware and have our community aware that all of us as educators, the board, the district, and teachers value small class size. And I think that the inequity of some of the classes, both at the elementary level, but especially at the secondary level where there's some very big classes, and obviously the need to produce or offer specialized classes that are much smaller exists. But I think we need to be aware that as the budget crunch comes around, we're going to have to be able to offer our teachers some sort of a carrot, and large class sizes is not going to be it. Right. So I think we need to be very seriously considering, both as a district and as a board, how we are going to do to make those class sizes more equitable and smaller. And I just wanted to pass that on. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you, Kathy. Okay, Tad Smith has his hand up.
Yeah, in the pre-COVID era, there was some discussion about doing an outreach program to the area around Dixon to highlight the strengths of our district, our specialty programs, the fact that we're going to have a newly renovated middle school to try to attract students' families to come into our district. Obviously, you guys have had your hands full, but I was just interested if anyone has thought about that in the last 6 months. Thank you.
Yeah, I've had conversation actually, Tad, with Luke and Catlin and Melissa and Jewel, and probably not Lloyd, just because I haven't had the same opportunity, about exactly what you're talking about. And yeah, this whole thing did change the game for sure. But we have to do that. We have to get back into marketing ourselves, and especially with all the homes going to be coming in, we need to be well poised. Again, to attract people. And I'm just realizing I shouldn't have answered that question.
Yeah, I was about to. You've forgotten to.
I'm sorry. I won't do that again, Luke.
We try. Okay, Mike is next.
Luke, get out the ruler and slap his wrist with it.
Do it myself.
I got a two-part. First one's in enrollment. I know we've talked a lot about, you know, people moving for housing costs and things like that. But what about, I've just been brought to my attention that there's a group of people that, you know, live in Dixon, but they go to school in Vacaville. One of the examples is during May, when everybody had those graduation posters out, there's one on South First Street that said Vacaville Bulldogs. So I'd be curious of why we have a group that chooses to do that. Second part, as far as staffing, I was wondering how Dixon Unified could be fully staffed in their grounds department. They haven't been fully staffed in over a year. They're short 2 positions right now. These are funded, budgeted positions. When will it be a priority to get this done? I love it when Mr. Dolan makes my points and he says, attractive to the eye, I quote. Our sites are ugly. When are we gonna fix it? Take the district office, for example. I came down there the other day, there's ash everywhere. The lawns aren't mowed. I mean, I just don't understand when that's going to be a priority, that we've been underfunded for a year or understaffed for a year. We're using public funds, using our highest paid employees to help out grounds. It's a stress on our department, poor working conditions, it's just not managed properly. Why don't we, if this is a direct tie to enrollment, why can't we justify a manager for that department that, goes around and makes sure these things are done. Grass is watered and mowed and trimmed, and equipment isn't walking off into the sunset. So yeah, I mean, I'd like to see some changes on that. And I mean, there's just nobody that, wants to come, fight for these positions, and they're there, they're available, they're in the budget, and we need to make it happen. And it's really shameful that it's taken this long to get that department fully staffed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Okay, Kelly Chavez.
Hello, good evening. I just was curious, or maybe it's just a statement. Could be a question or a statement, actually. But is there any conversation about using some of this time that we have during COVID to expand on our virtual program and create something that might be available to attract some of the families that have left the district that we know have, outsourced outside of our community, and try to draw them back in and increase not only attendance, but our revenue that we'll get from it and keep jobs. So just, I guess it's a statement of something that would be fantastic if, it was brought to the table, or if it already is, that would be even better.
And a good question too. Thank you, Kelly. Okay, any other public questions or comments? I see Jill Fry.
I'm sorry, are you just talking about the previous conversations about staffing, or is it any public comment at this point?
Anything on the enrollment and staffing update?
Okay, then I need to wait. Thank you.
Thank you, Jill. Okay, any other public comments on staffing and enrollment? Okay, seeing none, I'll close public comment. You want to answer some of those questions that were brought up, Brian?
I will. So Mike first asked the question about students crossing district boundaries to attend another school in another district. So those are allowed under law, under provisions of the education code. They're called inter-district agreements. So the primary reason why people pursue these IDAs, for short, is when a parent works in a neighboring district. So we both have students who transfer out of the district on IDAs and transfer in to the district. We do have a net loss, unfortunately, and that is always a concern for us. When employment is the factor in the parent requesting, you can't actually deny that request. And again, the overwhelming majority of ours come based on that employment issue. So that cross-district attendance is something that happens throughout California. Some places it's a huge problem. Vallejo City Unified School District, I know as one example, has about 500 students who go to Benicia Unified and about another 500 who go to Napa Valley Unified. 1,000 of their students, perhaps even, those were last year's numbers, it might even be higher this year, go to school in those other two districts. So that's a huge loss in terms of enrollment and revenue along with it. The point on grounds, so much of what you said there, Mike, is absolutely valid, and I'm happy when I can make your point for you as well. It doesn't happen as often probably as either of us wish, but that's okay. Tonight really was a focus on the certificated staffing. We are right now planning a transition on attacking grounds out there creatively while we're in this state of flux. They don't look okay right now, despite the work of our current employees. And so we're reorganizing around that. We don't have staffing ratios for in our classified units, and some districts do that and others don't. Cindy Nguyen, our Executive Director of Human Resources, does have some experience with that. So that's part of our dialogue right now around creating ratios, staffing ratios for things even things like TPMs and campus supervisors, paraprofessionals kind of driven by law, but there's many other job classes where ratios can be appropriate. So your point on the appearance of campuses right now is correct, and hopefully within a couple of weeks we'll see some significant improvement there. And then Kelly's point is one that absolutely hits home. We'd begun a little bit of work in Catlin, and Melissa in particular had asked about this, looking at independent study models to be able to attract and retain students. And we weren't moving quickly enough on that, and then poof, we went into closure. In the twisted way that this whole pandemic thing is rolling out, I think the distance learning program is probably pushing us toward readiness for that type of model that we wouldn't have been otherwise. I think whenever we reopen, we know there's going to be many families who are not comfortable sending their children back. So we're going to have to maintain a virtual or distance model at that point in time. And I think we have the obligation to maintain that as the highest quality program possible, and also to make it unique and special in such a way that we could draw from other districts, take people back from private schools or the online charters or homeschooling. As I know, some families are just doing homeschooling right now, not even the online charters. So we do, talking about the enrollment, I talked about quality of program and type of program, and your point addresses it quite perfectly. We have to be able to attract people.
Okay.
And those are the questions, Luke, that I had.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so let's move on to item 11A5, resolution number 20-1638 in support of Proposition 15, the funding for Schools and Communities Act.
Great. So I'll make a brief introduction. I don't know if any of the board would like to speak to this as well. I'll start by saying this is something of a controversial proposition on the ballot because it addresses what has been established as something really kind of untouchable in California politics for decades now. Proposition 13 was passed in 1978, and it put restrictions on the growth of property taxes, both for residences and commercial properties. And what this proposition attempts to do is to modify Proposition 13 regarding the highest value large business commercial properties within the state as a means to generate more revenue for schools and communities. And we remain in California. I think it's about $2,400 funded below the national average. Depending whose numbers you look at, we are in the bottom 10. Some even have it as 5 or 6 states in the nation for per pupil funding. And so this proposition is an effort with a broad-based coalition to make modifications to provide more adequate school funding outside of the Proposition 98 funding model, which is a formula-driven model that California uses to provide revenues to the schools on an annual basis. So we don't often bring resolutions to the board asking for support of a proposition or something else on the ballot, but in this critical period regarding school funding, we felt it was appropriate to bring this forward for your consideration. Certainly ask for anybody else on the board to elaborate on what I described as the purpose of this proposition and entertain any questions that you have as well. So.
Okay, thank you. Any board questions or comments?
Well, I've seen both of the commercials for Proposition 13, and those against, and the against ones don't talk about the highest, the highest commercial properties. It talks about that this would be detrimental to small businesses and mom and pop stores and those kinds of things. So that's either misinformation, but it could be, effective in making people say, well, this, the schools are one thing, but my small business is another. So that's just my comment, because I'm certainly in favor of Prop 13, but there's a lot of media pros and cons that may be some misinformation.
Okay, any other board comments? I guess my only comment will be, we know that the schools are in for some very difficult financial times with the cuts in funding coming up. And why don't we go out to public comment? I see Mike has his hand up.
I don't know I'm not educated on the subject, but anytime that we open loopholes like this, there's going to be a trickle down effect. And we're already talking about unaffordable housing, and whether that's $1 to people or whatnot. I mean, this is going to have a trickle down effect to housing cost in some way or another. So I worry about that. The district's always, any school district, always ready to throw their hand in the pot for more money. But the state has plenty of money. Catlin's pointed out several times, to her credit, that, the district used to get, a separate maintenance fund, and we don't get that anymore. So somebody needs to tell Governor Newsom to take that pay cut that he's supposed to have been taken, hasn't taken yet. We're one of the richest economies, and we can't fund our schools properly. More taxes, not the way to do it. But I assume you'll approve it because of politics. Thanks.
Thank you, Mike. Kathy Michaels.
And I'm on the other side of that spectrum because I have read this proposition thoroughly. I have gone to several different trainings for it, both pro and con. And I want to make it very clear for the public to understand a couple of things. One is that this is not a tax on small business. It is not a tax on residential. It is not a tax on ag land. It's a tax on any large company that makes $3 million or more a year. So I think that needs to be very clearly stated so that our small business people and our farmers who are working very hard on the land understand that this is not aimed at them. The second thing I want to make clear is that we've heard numbers that are almost $4 million that we're going to have to be forking out for our schools. And the passing of this proposition would give us at least $2 million in a year, more to come later. And I think that is something that I understand Mike's concern about, housing prices and the like, but I think people will pay housing prices if they have a valid reason to come to schools. I have a sibling who lives in Lexington, Massachusetts. Their property taxes are crazy, but their school system is phenomenal. And so we need to be aware that we may have to take some investment to go and get the school system we all think our kids need and deserve. And this is one way that we can do it. That would also help our law enforcement and our firefighters. So it's not just a school proposition, it's something that would help our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Kathleen.
Hi, good evening again. I want to echo and reiterate some of what Kathy Michaels said. I fully, as a voter, proud voter, and also proud DTA member, I fully endorse Prop 15. And, just to reiterate concerns and sadly, some absolutely bold-faced lies about Prop 15, that it will encroach upon potentially repealing Prop 13. That's absolutely false. Again, it's only targeting businesses that whose income is 3 million or higher. So the vast majority of small business owners will not be negatively impacted, and definitely not residential, property owners and agricultural owners, if they fall within or below the 3 million threshold. And just to maybe highlight the most pressing reason to have our school board endorse Prop 15 is that if Prop 15 it passes in November, Dixon Unified is looking at a 2,042,782 permanent increase in revenue. I will reiterate the word permanent. Roughly a 2 million permanent increase in revenue. That's roughly 6% of an increase permanently in our revenue. And when we're looking at in roughly 4 years, as Monique has presented over the last few months, when we're looking at in 4 years an $8 million deficit, we desperately need these funds. We need to make sure that we safeguard our students' education, that we safeguard the community of Dixon at large through making sure that we have law enforcement, firefighters fully equipped, protecting us. So please, 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 I implore you, endorse Prop 15 for the sake of our schools and the sake of our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathleen. Do we have any other public comment? Mr. Landeros.
I'm very concerned about all these propositions. Matter of fact, I'm going to be honest, this is the first time in 35 years that I've been citizen of Dixon that I pay attention to propositions. Honestly, I'm very, very concerned about education, and it makes me kind of a little bit upset the fact that we put another top priority than the education. You guys, the experts, you guys that have more knowledge in front of the big guys talking and the proper way. I think it's better if you guys told us what we can do. There's Mexican American communities that honestly I see and every day that they don't even have idea what's going on at all. They don't even understand what the propositions. So I personally think we have to start to educating everybody to pay attention to this. This education is very, this should be the #1 priority than anything. Dixon is a very, very beautiful community, smart, and honestly, it'd be nice if you guys told us what we can do exactly to make this up. I know that everything is harder right now, but it would be nice from your side, guys, if you told us what we can do. What exactly you recommended? With not put in a lot of facts and things and laws and this. No. Directly, what we can do to help our kids. If it is necessary, we have to push in the governor to whatever we make in the Mayfair, instead of they go to another things, go directly to schools. But honestly, you guys need to tell us what we can do. Now with the too many things that we might not understand, maybe a couple things clearly, what we can do to help our children to have enough funds, because this is a problem. I can't imagine, honestly, my kids growing up with no education, to be honest with you. That's the only thing that I can left for them. Education. That's my comment.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Tiffany. Got it there, Brian?
Yeah, I still see she's in.
I'm here.
There we
There
go.
you go.
I guess, sorry, I was talking to myself. I had it on mute. So as a voter, I have concerns with taxes in general, but I'm always for more taxes for schools, first responders, police departments, fire departments. So I understand all that. But then I don't understand sometimes when, say, we have a tax for a school and then funds are allocated for something else by the state, and then it hinders. And is this something that can be taken away from schools, that they can use it for something else? Because that's I don't know, I have a question about that. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mike, we're supposed to have people speak once per item. Sorry, bud. Anyone else? Tad.
So I'll follow up with a little bit of a concern. You know, we had the state lottery. It was supposed to be this windfall for schools. Never really quite worked out that way. You know, our gas tax was supposed to repair the roads. It got shunted to all sorts of other stuff. Never quite worked out that way. So someone asked, what can you all do to, you know, help us get organized and be more effective? You know, Sacramento ought to fund schools totally differently than how they're doing it. You know, we have the bond funding for infrastructure. That's a terrible way to do it because some school districts, you know, the population supports that, others it doesn't, and you get these discrepancies across the state. There needs to be a unified approach to get Sacramento to properly fund the schools with a dedicated funding source. These propositions, these one-off funding sources, you know, they're not going to cut it. It's just going to get worse. And Prop 15, it may or may not work, but I suspect we won't see the money that's promised. Thank you.
Thank you, Tad. Any other public comment? Okay, seeing none, I'll close public comment on this item. This is a resolution. Do we have a motion for approval of resolution number 20-1638 in support of Proposition 15?
I'll move.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. This is a resolution. Would anyone like to make a comment before we vote on the resolution? Okay, hearing none, we'll vote. Lloyd?
Aye.
Jewel?
Aye.
Melissa?
Aye.
Catlin?
Aye.
And I'm aye as well. Resolution passes. Okay, item 11A6, update of board policies and administrative regulations.
Yes, thank you, sir. So tonight we have two sets of updated policies and administrative regulations that are developed and provided to us by the California School Boards Association. They take law and convert it into policy for us. And most districts across California do use their services to take care of these policy manuals. So the first set of policies and regulations before you tonight comes from the May update. And typically what I do with these is I read through by title and just indicate if we're dealing with a new law, if it's an optional policy, if there's an option for us to adhere to. So I'll do that again, and then I shall answer any questions as best I can. I know we had some email communication regarding one area of these. So Luke, to whatever degree you'd like me to address those, I'll be happy to do so. So beginning with board policy 0430, this is related to the comprehensive local plan for special education. And we would be following option 3, which relates to the multi-district SELPA. And this is based on updated regulations regarding that local plan for special education. And AR 0430 related to that policy also is in response to the new regulations and law. Board policy and administrative regulations, on the uniform complaint procedures. These are related to updates in law regarding the uniform complaint process. We do have a fill in the blank element in the administrative regulation. That fill in the blank, the person responsible for taking uniform complaints in the district is the Assistant Superintendent of Educational Services. And there is an option in this policy. We would select option 2, which is that someone who has filed a complaint can make an appeal to the governing board if they're not satisfied with that outcome. Administrative regulations 1312.4 is just again an update related to the other updates within the Williams uniform complaint procedures. Williams being different from the uniform complaint process, but similarly to the UCP, this reflects changes to state law that we must comply with. Board policy 1340 and the related administrative regulation cover access to district records. So this is a policy in AR related to people recording or photographing governing board meetings and the like without physical contact. So you can use your own devices to obtain district records is what that means. Administrative regulation 3231 is on my list. It doesn't apply to us. So that was on impact aid. Board policy and exhibits, it's 41.12.9, 42.12.9, and 43.12.9. And when we get things grouped that way, that reflects addressing certificated employees, classified employees, and confidential / administrative employees. So all of the elements in this BP and the exhibit reflect to updated regulations and code. There's a lot of detail in there, and as I said before, we had some email communication regarding those that we can address at your leisure, at your pleasure. Board policy 4113 and same number with the administrative regulation reflects new law related to teacher credentialing requirements. Board policy 4119.42 and again 4219 and 4319, as well as the related administrative regulations and exhibits, is an update based on law and new federal regulations related to exposure control plan for bloodborne pathogens. This is not specifically related to COVID. However, while it does cover the bloodborne pathogens, although it does have, excuse me, some applicability. Similarly, board policy 4119.43 and 4243 and the administrative regulation address changes on universal precautions, especially related to HIV/AIDS, and excuse me, also infectious control practices that had to be clarified under new regulations as well. Board policy 4151, 4251, 4351 is related to employee compensation. And this is a deletion of some labor code citation that no longer applies. Board policy 5141.5 is new policy that is optional. It's related to mental health. I advocate that we have embraced mental health services and addressing the importance of supporting our students in that area, that we do adopt that new policy. Board Policy 5145.3 and the related administrative regulation relate to new law in non-discrimination and harassment based on medical condition, and a new requirement for posting related to non-discrimination issues. Again, we have a fill in the blank element there that would be completed by the Assistant Superintendent of Educational Services. 6020 is on parent involvement, and this relates to parental involvement in the development of the LCAP. 6115, ceremonies and observances. This relates to the designation of state holidays and observing those. And final one that was on the list that we do not address is a Title VI Indian education program. So you don't receive that. That was in the update, but you don't receive that. So that is the May set of policies. And again, I'll try to tackle any questions that you have.
Okay, board questions. Are there any? So as you said, these are CSBA recommendations based on changes in the law, and the items removed are items that the law has changed and they've said they've either corrected or need to just take it out.
Correct.
And I think we can address more directly the email concerns, but I kind of distill it down to a number of these, and board policies that we already have certain requirements in them. Some of these, we have some here that such as AR 6020, report to the board regarding efforts of gaining parent involvement. 5141.5, training regarding emerging mental health conditions. I guess the concern, and I'm sure he can speak to it in public comment, because I see his hands already up, is how are we going to make sure that we actually are, we don't want to enact these and then not take the action that we're required to by adopting them.
Sure. So, and certainly, it's easy to identify both in some of this content and in other areas. We're not fully compliant with some of our noticing or posting obligations. That's not done intentionally or willfully. It's just part of the management and implementation of these policies. So one of the things that we have begun and are really trying to get fully instituted is, as Cicely, my executive secretary, and I go through, actually creating a spreadsheet of the actions that must be taken and by whom as the follow-ups. So in these particular sets, there were a number of things that require new postings out on the website or other locations as one example. So Cicely recorded all of those, and then that's distributed now out to the appropriate person. Some of the things included here as concerns run in the world of HR. Some are in maintenance and operations. Some people, they really kind of run the full gamut of the of district operations. So a big chunk of this, Luke, to answer your question again, is that we do a better job of tracking exactly what the follow-up action has to be. Sometimes policies get approved in a big batch, and some of the finer details are lost, I think. So I think we've improved our practices around this recently and have some catching up to do, certainly.
So can we have some kind of a plan developed for how to review the policy complying with all the necessary, am I freezing up?
You did for a moment there, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can we have a report back about a plan to review and set up these things? And I'm gonna go out to public comment before I start to freeze again. And Catlin, if you guys lose me, please jump in and I'll get right back on. Okay, so let's go out to public comment. Mike's been waiting patiently with his hand up.
I appreciate you taking the time to read my email. I appreciate your reply that you got it, Luke. That's always nice to know that it didn't disappear. It's hard to go through 190 pages in 5 to 7 days and, take a good look at this. But regardless of, it sounds kind of dismissal from both you and Brian, the concerns. I believe if you're a classified employee, you need to look at this, starting at page 87. And you need to take a good look at this because I believe that it's removing some of your rights and you should be concerned about that. I'm going to change my profile name to my personal email address. You can send me an email. I'll send you my notes on it. But I think you should be concerned about this, both as a rights, as far as rights being taken away. And, definitely the noticing is a problem, but, statements like employee handbooks and illness prevention programs. I mean, we're in the 1900s as far as that, not in the 2020s. In fact, we probably don't even have a microfiche on these policies. So we have a long ways to go on that. And it's really sad that it hasn't been a priority before this. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Any other public comment? Okay, seeing none, this is just information and discussion, so we'll move on to item 7, another update of board policies and administrative regulations.
Yes, and virtually the same process here, so I'll try to keep it moving quickly. This is the July set of policies. It's actually a little bit of a smaller group. So board policy 3555 reflects new law related nutrition program compliance, meeting the regs from the U.S. Department of Agriculture. And this one has an option included in it, and we would stick with option 2, which involves a board appeal should there be a complaint. And there is an exhibit that goes along with that one that is used to help file that complaint. AR 4030 is in response to new federal regulations related to non-discrimination in employment. It has a fill in the blank element, which is the Executive Director of Human Resources would be completing that. Board policy and administrative regulations 4119.11 and then 4243 as well. So all 3 groups of employees. These are new federal regulations related to sexual harassment. Regarding the amount of training that has to be completed and the role of the Title IX coordinator in overseeing sexual harassment policies. 4119.12, 4243 also deals with Title IX sexual harassment complaint procedures. And again, in response to new federal regulations. 5141.22 is related to new law on infectious diseases. This does touch upon COVID-19 as well as other elements of infectious disease control. Administrative regulation 5145.3 addresses new federal regulations on non-discrimination and harassment. And again, our complaint officer would be the Assistant Superintendent for Educational Services. BP 5145.6 is an update on all of the parental notifications that must be made, the timing of such. These reflect new laws, new federal regulations, including, both federal and state regulations regarding notifications that must be issued. Some of those annually and some of those less frequently. Board policy 5145.7 and the related administrative regulation addresses sexual harassment. Posting requirements regarding policy and process for resolving complaints as well. Has a fill in the blank. This would be the Assistant Superintendent of Educational Services. 5145.71 is a new regulation on Title IX sexual harassment complaint procedures. So a lot of updates on harassment and non-discrimination here in both of these in response to new law. Board policy in AR 6142.7 relates to physical education and activity. This addresses participation regardless of gender, gender expression, and other protected classifications. 6159, both BP and AR, relates to the individual educational program, and that ties into that comprehensive local plan for special education that was mentioned before, based on a state law here, SB 98 in particular. Board policy 6159.1 and the related administrative regulation, procedural safeguards for special education. Again, new state regulations regarding when a complaint is filed and how the rights of the student must be safeguarded. 6159.2 is non-public, non-sectarian, and agency services for special education. And again, this is in response to new law and protections for students who are outside of the traditional public school system. So I'll be happy again to answer any questions. Otherwise, both these sets will come back to you at our next meeting for your approval.
Thank you. Any board questions? Seeing none, let's go out to public comment. Any public questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, we'll close public comment, and this is just a discussion and information item, so we'll move on to item 11B1, learning continuity and attendance plan approval.
Mr.
Again. Yes, hello again. So if you'll recall, last week we had our last meeting, we had our public hearing on the learning continuity plan. At that time, there were no questions offered by the community with regard to the plan. At that time, I did offer the public a chance to go ahead and email any questions to us here at the district office. And I received one question, or kind of a series of questions late this afternoon or early afternoon today, kind of specifically asking around information with regard to our RTI program. Just as a refresher, RTI, our reading intervention program at elementary school, is something that's been in our traditional local control accountability plan, or LCAP, for many, many years, and is referenced in a number of places in the learning continuity plan as one of the ways that we are hoping to mitigate the learning loss that we know happened last spring, as well as address the ongoing needs that many of our students have. The questions really, we're searching for more information with regard to what we're doing to monitor this program. And then also, do we have any data on the percentage of students who exit the program, i.e., do we have students that kind of that continuously stay in the program and never exit it? So to answer the first question, we monitor the effectiveness in a number of ways. You know, typically at this meeting or the next meeting, in a regular school year, this is when my staff and I would be offering our CASP data, our state testing data from the prior year. And during that time, we will tease out different student groups, including students who receive specialized services. So in years past, for example, I've talked about the students that we're seeing in our RTI program and how they're succeeding as compared to those who don't receive those services. We also have a number of other assessments that we use, such as BPST for students in the younger grades. We already talked about the Ren Learn Early Lit and the Ren Learn STAR exam earlier in the meeting that we use for all of our early elementary and elementary age students. And then we also have some exams that we use specifically for our students who are receiving the RTI services, Fontes and Pinnell running records being the principal one. And then we also do ELA, SBAC interim assessments for our students as well. With regard to the percent of students who come in and exit or don't exit the program, I was not able to get that data prior to the meeting today, that is something we can pull. And I'll just say that's something that we, as a leadership team, we've been talking about. It's a concern, and we want to make sure that we're not just keeping kids in an intervention to which they're not responding. But then I'll also say that when kids fall behind in reading, it takes time to catch them up. So I do want to preach patience. If we're not moving a kid out in 1 or 2 months, that doesn't mean that the program's not moving. I think if we're seeing kids there for over the course of an entire year or years, and we're not seeing any growth, then that's a real sign that programs aren't working. And we certainly have those kids. So we need to make sure that we are continue to refine the program to meet the needs. So those were the questions that I had from the community on this. Otherwise, I received none. And we'll leave it to you for whether or not to approve the plan.
Great, thank you, Nick. Do we have any board questions or comments? I had 2 questions, and you kind of answered the one earlier about the after-school stuff. But I noticed on page 13, you talk about school tutoring for students at the Dixon Migrant facility. And I was curious where that is in development and what the plan is.
So that's something that we've done traditionally every year, and where we are right now with that, I don't know, to be completely honest with you, Luke. I can work with Maria to get that answered for us. I know that we have that budgeted in our Migrant Ed DSA, which is a separate plan. So that's something that we have funded. I believe it's happening. I just cannot confirm that for you right now.
Okay. All right, that's all I had. So let's go out to public questions and comment. Are there any public questions or comments? Please raise your hand now. Okay, seeing none. So this is an action item. I will entertain a motion to approve the learning continuity and attendance plan.
So move.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call vote. Lloyd?
Aye.
Yule?
Aye.
Melissa?
Aye.
Catlin?
Aye.
And I'm aye as well. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. Okay, agenda items for future meetings. Any board requests for agenda items? Okay.
Luke, there was a list about what we were doing to maintain our equipment and protect our investments. We still haven't seen that. And so I just wanted to bring it up again.
Okay, thank you, Melissa.
Yeah, we have part of that together on the vehicles, and Mark and I need to finish up on the other pieces. So next meeting.
Okay, great. And I don't know when we were planning to have an update on what's going on with the equity task force and the response to that.
Next meeting, we'll do that next meeting. Yep.
Perfect.
Yes.
Luke, can I ask one more question, one more agenda item? Maybe an update about the farm, because last we heard that it hasn't been hooked up to power, and so a farm update would be good.
I will be happy to do that in 2 weeks. I've been signing some contracts here in the last couple of days. So yes, happy to do that one.
Brian, can I just jump in there? It's tangentially related, but I know that the board has been interested in the past. So we're looking to do a CTE presentation either at the second meeting in October or first meeting in November with our new CTE TOSA and the team from Dixon High School.
Okay, great. That'll be great. Thanks, Nick.
Okay, anything else? Any board items? Okay, hearing none. Any board announcements? Seeing none. Coming events. September 21st, DHS Back to School Night. September 23rd, CAJ Back to School Night. September 24th, Main Prairie High School Back to School Night. And our next board meeting will be October 1st.
Let me jump in, Luke. Actually, for the folks still watching, listening, we are going to hold, we just affirmed this up earlier this evening, we're going to hold a special workshop meeting on Monday related to budget. So we've just been able to put this together and get a quorum of the board. So that's going to start at 6 p.m. on Monday. The information about that will go out tomorrow. And it will involve kind of a full look at where we currently stand with regards to budget, discuss some of the key questions that we need to address here in the next couple of months, and present 3 scenarios for how to proceed for us to receive some direction from the board. We're doing this in a hurried manner, in part because the Budget Advisory Committee is going to have its first meeting next Wednesday. And so we wanted to get in front of that meeting with the governing board. So we apologize for late notice. This has been kind of a quick idea and a quick push to get it scheduled. But we will get that publicity out tomorrow on this issue. Okay.
Thank you for that reminder and giving notice of that item. And that having been said now, I will entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I'll move.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
As well, meeting adjourned. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everybody.